SAT reading is where most students lose, not because they're not smart, but because no one ever taught them how to actually beat the test. And this free 2.5-hour masterclass is completely different. We will cover real strategies that work even if you've struggled with reading your whole life. And in the next 3.5 hours, I will show you exactly how to read faster, find answers quicker, and avoid the traps that the SAT sets for you. And this could be the most valuable video or lesson that you will ever watch before your exam. So without further ado, let's get started. We all know a feeling when a vocab question pops up with a word you've never seen before. What if you still could answer it without ever memorizing thousands of words? Today, I will show you 5 methods that don't rely knowing the words but on tricks top scorers use. Stick around because this could change how you can handle SAT vocabulary questions even if you haven't studied a single word. So let's talk about Sam, a student just like you. He put in the hours, he crammed word lists, he felt prepared. But on test day, total blank. The vocab questions came up and he felt that he was looking at a wheel. Words like temper, moderate, and balance all sounded close enough. But how do you choose? Sam felt stuck. But then he learned a system that changed the game for him, and today you will get the same advantage. Trust me, even strong students fall for this trap. Think about phrases like not uncommon or never impossible. The SAT loves these little tricks because they're just confusing enough under pressure. So here's the move. Whenever you see a double negative, flip it. Make not uncommon to common and never impossible to possible. A simple adjustment, but under time pressure, it's a game changer. Keep this in your mental toolkit and you will avoid some of the SAT's trickiest traps. But Sam had even a bigger realization. Even though he knew a few tricks, it still felt like guessing. So here's what he did, and it's a game changer. Before even glancing at the answer choices, predict what might fit the sentence. Imagine the word in your head. When you finally look at the options, you are matching your idea with the right word. It's no longer about guessing, but it's about finding the best fit. Okay, so what if you don't know the word at all? You're not alone, and this is where prefixes become your secret weapon. The SAT is built on patterns, and prefixes give you clues so that you can break down unfamiliar words. Let's have a look at an example. Subterranean. So in this case, sub means under, and terra means earth. Even if you don't know the exact meaning, you can guess it's related to something under the earth. Instead of memorizing every single word, you're learning to decode. And because you've been watching so far, I've got a special gift for you. A PDF list of essential SAT prefixes to help you reach that dream score. Grab it through the link in the description. Now, once Sam started using these techniques, he realized the SAT felt different. It wasn't about cramming, it was about his system. But he knew he needed to master one last skill so that he can see his last score improve. And this is where elimination becomes your best friend. Here's a hidden truth. Most SAT vocabulary questions have 2 answers that are totally wrong. So instead of looking for the right answer, just start spotting the wrong ones. And you have to ask yourself some questions like, does this word fit the context? Does it match the sentence tone? If it feels off, cross it out. Now here's where even the sharpest SAT students stumble. There are three massive mistakes that nearly everyone makes. Have you ever chosen a word that just looks impressive? You thought it might score you extra points. Here's a little secret. The SAT sets a trap for students who fall for this. You will often see a sophisticated looking word and it's tempting to pick it, right? But here's the trick. 9 times out of 10, that word is designed to mislead you. It's not about sounding fancy. It's about it fitting the sentence correctly. Let's talk about the song. Have you ever picked a word that seemed like a perfect match? And you find out that it was way off. It's easy to miss, but each sentence on the SAT carries a tone, a feeling, and ignoring this tone can flip the meaning entirely. For example, if a sentence is lighthearted and you pick a serious word, you've fallen into the tone trap. Finally, let's talk about overthinking. Have you ever narrowed down your choices to answers only to start second guessing yourself? Maybe you wonder, am I missing something? Overthinking is where most students trip up, and here's why. The SAT rewards instincts. If you're leaning towards an answer choice, trust it. Your gut feeling is often spot on. The more you second guess, the more likely you are to go for the wrong choice. I want to give you a complete system to master digital SAT inference questions. The exact approach that top scorers use to get every inference question right on the exam. So let's dive in. So as you can see from this whiteboard, there are 2 easy questions, 2 medium questions, and there are 3 hard questions. And I got these questions from SAT question bank. And the most important thing, I excluded active questions, which is any of these questions are not from Blue Book practice tests, and they're only a little bit in question bank, and we're not spoiling any of your Blue Book exams or anything. So without further ado, let's get into it. So firstly, easy questions. You may be thinking, well, I don't need easy questions, but still, to warm yourself up, it's really important to solve these easy ones first. Then we will move on to medium, then hard questions. So here's the first question. You can try out on your own first, and you can watch my explanations after that. So we need to complete the text, which is inference question. One aspect of in-person shopping that online shopping cannot replicate is the opportunity to touch a product before buying it. Does this difference matter? So they're talking about this difference, touching versus not touching. In an experiment, researchers asked one group of participants to touch a mug and a toy, while another group was prohibited from touching the 2 items. The participants were then asked how much money they would pay for the items. People who got to touch the items were willing to pay much more money for them than were people who weren't allowed to touch the items. This finding suggests that. So there was group 1. They touched the items and they paid more. There was group number 2. They didn't touch, they paid less. So the key takeaway here is that physical touch increases the perceived value. Now we can move on to the answer choices. Choice A, people who mainly shop online probably spend more money every month than people who mainly shop in person. Well, they're not comparing shopping in person and online, and they're not tracking total spending, a monthly total spending. That's why choice A is wrong. Choice B, in-person shopping may make products seem more valuable than they seem if only view it online. Yes, that is the exact same thing that we thought about, which is touching. Touching usually occurs in person, so touching equals higher value. So that's why we can keep choice D. Choice C, retailers with in-person and online stores should charge the same price for a given product in both places. Well, this experiment doesn't suggest pricing strategies, so that's why you can eliminate it.
Choice D, online retailers may be able to raise the prices they charge for products that they're only available online. This isn't about exclusivity, and it's only about touch versus no touch. And we could have inferred that in-person retailers may be able to rate, but here they're telling online, which is completely the opposite of what you think. So that's why B is the best choice here. Now let's move on to the next question. And you can pause the video now if you want to and solve it. Let's read it. Author Conan Doyle's stories about detective Holmes were published between these dates. They have inspired countless successful adaptations, including comic strips, movies, and a television series directed by that person who is celebrated for his animated movies. Until 2014, these stories were copyrighted. The right to adapt was only available to those who could afford the copyright fee and gain approval from the strict copyright holders of Doyle's estate. Some journalists predict that the number of adaptations is likely to increase since the end of copyright means that. So let's break down this passage. So before 2014, the copyright restricted adaptations. They needed money and approval. But after 2014, copyrights expired. So that means there were no fees, no approval needed. So yeah. And now let's predict. So I believe that because copyright ending removes those barriers, there's no cost, there's no permission, people can freely adapt the stories without any cost. Now let's move on to answer choices. Doyle's original stories still become hard to find. Well, the passage doesn't talk about whether it's easy to find or hard to find, so we can eliminate choice A. People will become more interested in detective stories than were in the 1800s. There's nothing about the number of people becoming more interested or less interested. That's why you can eliminate choice B as well. Producing adaptations will become easier and less expensive. Well, that's the choice that I really like because it directly connects to no fees, no permission required prediction. That's why I believe choice C is the best choice here. Now, choice D, the former copyright holders of Doyle's estate will return the fees they collected. Well, there's nothing about refund here. That's why choice D is wrong. So the best choice here is choice C. Now let's move on to medium questions. Here's the first question, and you can pause the video right now. If you want, you can solve it. So let's read the passage. Astronomers investigated the region of Mars because it appears to contain irregularly shaped craters. It may have been caused by massive volcanic explosions. In the investigations of Arabia Terra, the researchers found remnants of ash deposits in an amount and thickness that would result from a massive volcanic eruption. However, here you have a shift in the passage. Erosion and past resurfacing events could have modified the surface of the planet, therefore blank. So let's kind of try to break this down. So this region has irregular craters. And it's some sort of linked to massive volcanic eruptions, and there is a problem. Erosion and resurfacing could have changed the surface over time. So that's our problem. So the key kind of main takeaway that I would get is that the current evidence might not perfectly reflect the Mars volcanic history due to its modifications, right? Because they've modified, right? Let's kind of try to predict. Here we have a however, and that signals that the original volcanic evidence might be distorted. The answer should highlight that the current surface might not show its true. It's like it might not show its true past activity. So now let's move on to choices. Choice A, the current makeup of the Arabia Terra region might not accurately reflect the volcanic activity of Mars past. Well, yeah, it directly connects that erosion, and it says that it's not really reflecting its true past self. So let's skip A. Choice B. Eruptions from Mars volcanoes were likely not as massive as astronomers previously believed. Well, we don't really, and in addition to that, the text doesn't even challenge previous beliefs about those eruption size, right? That's why choice B is wrong because there's nothing about size. We don't know whether it's massive or small. As choice C, ash was most likely expelled from multiple different volcanoes on Mars' surface. Well, the passage doesn't focus on multiple sources. It focuses on one massive eruption. That's why C is also wrong. Choice D, the craters found in the Arabia Terra region were necessarily created by events other than volcanic eruption. Well, nothing about like other events. That's why D is wrong. So the best choice here is choice A. So yep. Always my tip is looking out for words like that show contrast, however, and this signals the shift in the main point of another. And yeah, now we can move on to the next question. You can pause the video right now if you want to. So yep. So let's read the text. So here we have a Declaration of Independence, and there was an end of the revolution against France that began in 1791, written in French, which is not the first language of most Haitians, but which was used throughout Europe as a language of international diplomacy. The declaration notes that Haiti will not bring rebellion to other Caribbean nations, promises to respect the sovereignty of its neighbors, widely understood as a reassurance to the United States, and sets up Haiti as an example for future struggles against colonizers, and implicit reference to the many colonies then found in the Americas. So, even though the declaration is explicitly addressed to the Haitian people, it's reasonable to conclude that's blank. So, let's kind of try to break that. So, French, it was international language for diplomacy, and it was not the first language of Haitians. And the promises to neighbors, and it positions Haiti as an example of kind of anti-colonial movements. And here we have a key contrast, and it says explicitly for Haitians, but includes messages for others, right? So let's try to predict. So here we have, as you can see, the contrast. Although it was addressed to these Haitian people, the declaration was aimed at multiple audiences, not just Haitian people. I believe that's what my prediction is. It might be addressed also to international observers. It might also be addressed or aimed to neighbors of France. So yeah. Now let's move on to choices. Aspects of the declaration were modeled on similar documents from other countries. Well, there's no inspiration from other declarations, and there are no documents there, so A is wrong. Choice B. The French government may have been surprised by the declaration. Well, nothing about reaction, right? There's nothing about surprise. That's why B is also wrong. Many Haitian people oppose the evolution and the declaration. Well, there's nothing about opposing in the passage. That's why choice C is also wrong. Choice D, the declaration actually had several intended audiences. Well, yeah, it might have been addressed for international readers, for neighbors, for neighbor countries. So D is the best choice here. Now we can move on to hard questions. And I'm sure that you will learn a ton from solving these. And as you solve more, as you analyze more of these types of questions, you will gain more knowledge on how to answer these. So you can pause the video right now and try out this hard SAT question in this inference question type. So now let's read the text. So here we have Laura Mulvey, and Mulvey has theorized that in narrative film, shots issuing from a protagonist's point of view compel viewers to identify with the character. touch identification is heightened by invisible editing. Okay, that's interesting. Or editing so inconspicuous that it renders cuts between shots almost unnoticeable. Conversely, movie proposes that conspicuous editing or the absence of point of view shot would induce a more critical stance toward a protagonist. Consider, for example, the attic scene in the Birds, a conspicuously edited sequence of tons of shots, few of which correspond to the protagonist to a point of view. According to Mulvey's logic, this scene should affect viewers by length. So, let's kind of try to break down this passage. So there is point of view shots, and there's also invisible editing. And so those, when we blend both of these, viewers identify with the protagonist. If there is conspicuous editing plus no point of view shots, viewers take a critical stance towards a protagonist. And then it's giving an example. So my prediction would be, in this case, it was attic scene, right? Those scenes might reduce viewer identification with protagonists, and it could kind of create some sort of a distance, I believe. So now we can move on to choices. Choice A, obscuring the awareness of a high degree of artifice involved in constructing the montage. Well, conspicuous editing means viewers notice the cuts, they don't ignore them. That's why choice A is wrong. Choice B, lessening their identification with the protagonist, if not alienating them from the character altogether. Well, yeah, let's keep this trip because there's no problem here. Choice C, compelling them to identify with the film's director whose proxy is the camera and not with the protagonist. Well, text never says something about shifting identification. That's why C is wrong. Because of that. Because there is no shift. Choice D, diverting the attention away from the film's content and towards its stylistic attributes. Well, it might be true, but the question focuses on identification, not that general attention. That's why D is wrong. And the best choice here is choice B. And in these types of SAT questions, your understanding of the passage might not be 100%, but looking at the answer choices, by eliminating them, you can find your answer. Like, choices have a lot more to tell than the passage. Now let's move on to the next question. If you want, you can pause here and solve this question, and you can test your SAT skills. So without further ado, let's read the text. So here we have telescope HST, and it's projected to maintain operation until at least 2030. But it has already revolutionized high-resolution imaging of stellar system bodies in visible and ultraviolet UV light wavelengths, notwithstanding that only about 6% of the bodies imaged by the HST are within the solar system. NASA researchers Cindy L. Young and colleagues assert that a new space telescope dedicated exclusively to solar system observations would permit an extensive survey of minor solar system bodies and long-term UV observation to discern how solar system bodies change over time. So the recommendation therefore implies that the HST. So let's kind of break it down. So there is current role of HST here, which is it operates until at least 2030, and it's so good at visible and ultraviolet image, that light's wavelengths imaging of them. But there is a contrast here. Only about 6% of the bodies are within the solar system. Then there is this person, Young, and he or she proposes that a new telescope, a new one, brand new one, dedicated to the solar system, which HST couldn't, right? Only about 6% of HST couldn't do that. So it's kind of the new telescope, addresses those gaps in HST's capabilities or its usage need. So we can now predict, right? So Jung's team wants a dedicated tool, I believe, for solar system because HST could only about 6% of the bodies in HST could do those solar systems. Yep. Now let's move on to choices. You can analyze those choices. HST will likely continue to be used primarily to observe objects outside the solar system. Well, that's a good choice. We can keep this choice. Will no longer be used to observe solar system objects if the telescope recommended by Young and colleagues is deployed. Well, the text says HSC operates until 2030, and there's no mention of stopping existing tasks, so we can literally eliminate choice B. Can be modified to observe the features of solar system object that are of interest to Young and colleagues. Well, HSD can be modified, but it implying that HST can be easily modified. That's why we can eliminate this choice as well, because we can't modify it, right? HST lacks the sensors to observe the wavelengths of lights needed to discern how solar system bodies change over time. Well, the text says HST revolutionized UV imaging, and Jung wants more UV studies, not different sensors. Like, we don't need sensors at all. That's why these also brought. And the best choice here is choice A. So now we can move on to the last but not least hard question on Inference. If you want, you can literally pause this video right now. I mean, like, solve it on your own first, and then you could listen to my explanation. So, yep, let's read it. During the Restoration in France, the right to vote required in Paris that a person paid at least 300 francs in direct taxes to the governments. The four most common taxes were levies on real estate, the doors and windows, and the businesses. Foreign investors were exempt from taxation. Although relatively few people paid the taxes on real estate, it was the main means of voter qualification and accounted for over 2/3 of government receipts during this period, such as that during Women Restoration. So there was voter qualification, and they relied on paying those taxes. And there were foreign investors, they were not part of those taxes, and it was like little or no contribution to voter eligibility. And like, people relying on those foreign investments likely didn't really qualify to vote because they weren't paying enough taxes. So yeah, let's predict now. So yes, people with those foreign investments are a little bit of, they're not gonna means that they're not gonna pay taxes. That's why they can't vote, I guess. So yeah. Now let's move on to choices. Choices help us. Those people who had the right to vote most likely had substantial holdings of French real estate. Real estate was one of those taxed areas, but the text doesn't really prioritize it over others. So it's kind of right, but it's not fully right, right? It's only partially right, and that's a type of a trap that the College Board wants you to fall into. But you're not gonna do that because you know that it's partially right answer. The voting habits of French artisans and merchants were affected in reducing tax burdens on businesses. Well, the text never discusses voting habits influencing those tax policy. That's why these are also wrong. To see the number of doors and windows in French residences was kept to a minimum, but increased after 1830. Well, text doesn't even, yes, text mentions those doors and windows, but it doesn't discuss trends, right? There are no trends there. So that's why T is also wrong. Choice D, people with foreign investments were unlikely to have the right to vote. Yes, because foreign investors weren't taxed. So the people couldn't meet that 300 franc tax threshold. So that's the right choice, right? So the best choice here is choice D. Here we have a white board where I will show you so many SAT strategies and SAT questions so that you can ace your exam. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is a 2-hour SAT reading masterclass, and you're gonna learn so much in this masterclass. And there are two things that we will do, which is firstly, we will explore one strategy that can be applied for most SAT reading questions. And we will also do some practice with different question types on the SAT reading section, and I will also give you tips in order to solve those questions. So firstly, let's explore that one strategy. And it's so simple. Reading the question first, identifying the question type, reading the passage carefully, predicting, and selecting the right answer choice. And it was something that I should have said, even though it's a little basic, but now let's dive in. So we will start out with practice with question types, and I will give it. So firstly, let's explore main idea questions. Well, main idea questions require you to have a bit of a unique strategy, which is firstly, you need to identify the general topic first. That is the number one thing that you're going to do. Next up, you will go broad, you'll go specific. And your kind of prediction for answer choices is going to be way more specific. And here's the thing, you should look for contrast, arguments, or position. And when you do practice with this question type, you will understand how to apply this thing, like identifying whether it's a contrast or whether there is an argument or position. And here's the SAT question. Now, like before we go into this SAT question, I should tell you one important thing, which is one trap that a lot of students fall into. And that is choosing an answer just because it has words that are in the passage. Don't be confused by that. Now let's move on to the question. So here you have it. Here's the passage and here are the answer choices. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So let's read the text. So it asks for the main idea. Observations of distant galaxies reveal that the light emitted from them is often redshifted. So now we know the general topic, which is a light, like redshifted light. That's the general topic, meaning the wavelengths of the light are stretched, making them appear redder than they should be. And there's also this Doppler effect where the sound of an ambulance siren lowers in pitch as it moves away from an observer. Astronomers use the amount of redshift in a galaxy's light to estimate its velocity relative to Earth. Galaxies with larger redshifts are moving away from us at higher speeds, providing evidence for the expansion of the universe. So my prediction is that those redshift can allow those distant galaxies to expand on the universe. So that is my prediction. Now let's move on to choices. Choice A, redshift is a phenomenon that affects the color of light emitted from distant galaxies. Well, it's partially correct, but it's a little too narrow. Yes, that is true. The thing that is true is that redshift makes light appear redder. That is exactly true, but the passage isn't just about color changes. It's about using redshift as evidence for the expansion of the universe. So this is not the best choice here because it has some parts that are a little bit off. So that's why A is wrong. Choice B, astronomers use the Doppler effect to estimate the distance of galaxies from Earth. Well, the passage, yes, said that astronomers use redshift. But it doesn't say that astronomers use the Doppler effect to estimate velocity. The Doppler effect is mentioned only as a comparison here. It's not the main focus, so it shifts the main focus of the passage. That's why B is also wrong. Choice C, the amount of redshift in a galaxy's light provides evidence for the expansion of the universe. That's a perfect choice. Like, this is the main idea of the passage. Redshifts helps prove that the universe is expanding. So it covers the most important part of the passage. That's why C is the correct answer. Choice D, the sound of an ambulance siren changes pitch as it moves away from an observer due to the Doppler effect. Well, it's something that is completely off topic. The ambulance siren is just an example to help explain redshift, and it's not the main focus of the passage here. That's why D is also wrong. Now, let's move on to the... So in this case, the general topic was redshift, and our prediction, as I told, was redshift is important because it helps astronomers understand that the universe is expanding. Now let's move on to the next type of a main idea question. And in this type, we have a poem. And sometimes you might actually expect a poem on your exam. So firstly, let's read the poem. I wish I had paid attention to the first signs, the first whispers of change in the air. If the skies were darker or the rivers ran dry, it might have been subtle for all I can say. So unnoticed did it slip away. So blind was I to the shifts around me, so dull to mark the falling of the leaves that warned of storms in coming days. Well, the poem here shows or describes how the speaker failed to notice early signs of that environmental change. As you can see, storms here, that means there is an environmental change. They also mentioned that those signs are subtle, but they were really significant. And they regret not realizing the importance of those changes earlier. And I believe that the speaker is kind of reflecting on how those environmental warning signs go unnoticed until it's too late. So yeah. So they're regretting over not noticing environmental changes earlier. Now let's look at choices. Choice A, the speaker reflects on how changes in nature often go unnoticed until their consequences become severe. Well, that's a great choice. I like this choice because this matches our prediction. And the speaker talks about missing early warning signs. That is exactly what the poem was about. So I guess that's the correct answer choice. But still, let's have a look at others. Choice B, because the speaker was unaware of the early signs of environmental change, they now struggle to understand the impact. I guess it's too specific for this main idea question, and the speaker regrets not noticing the signs, but the passage doesn't say they struggle to understand the impact now. So that's why B is wrong. Choice C is a new environmental crisis looms. The speaker debates the best way to respond and take action. Well, it's completely off topic, right? That's an example of a choice which is off topic, and you can literally eliminate these choices really easily. It doesn't mention future crisis and nothing about taking action, so C is completely wrong. Choice D, after years of disregarding the environment, the speaker worries it may be too late to reverse the damage. Well, I guess it's too extreme. That's an example of a choice that shows a too extreme trap. The passage doesn't say the speaker actively disregarded the environment and just that they didn't notice the changes. So that's why D is wrong because of that. Now let's move on to the next question type, which is main purpose. Well, something that I should tell you is that main purpose is not a main idea. So yeah, that is something that you should definitely understand. And here we have a question that I've created, and you can pause the video now. You can solve it. So now, they're asking for the main purpose. Let's read the passage. In the early 1900s, pioneering filmmaker began creating movies that depicted the experiences of Black Americans, challenging prevailing stereotypes in mainstream Hollywood. So there is a filmmaker, and he makes movies to show the experiences of Black Americans. Yep. His films, including those, addressed issues. So what are those issues? Such as racial injustice, economic struggles, and migration. So his work paves the way for future generations of Black filmmakers and remain a subject of scholarly study. So this passage talks about that filmmaker, his films, and his impact on Black American cinema, I guess. Yeah. Now let's move on to answer choices. Choice A, to discuss the impact of an influential filmmaker. I guess that's a correct answer choice because that was the exact same thing that the passage talked about. They talked about is his impact. As you can see, it also remained a subject of scholarly study. So let's keep A. Choice B, to explain how silent films were made. Well, this passage isn't about the process of making those silent films, so we can literally eliminate this choice. Choice C, to compare the works of two early Black directors. Well, there is only one filmmaker discussed in this passage, so we can literally eliminate it. To describe the difficulties of filming on location, well, the passage doesn't even mention it, so we can literally eliminate D as well, so A is the best choice here. And now let's move on to the next question type here, which is function questions. As you can see, I should tell you most common before doing that, let's move on. Let's look at this question. This is how function questions look like. There is a one sentence that is underlined, and you should identify the function of that underlined portion. Before we go into that question, you need to know common function types. So the first type is meaning or explanation. That is, there might be some claim, and the next sentence, the underlined part, could explain it. So that's an example of meaning or explanation function type. Next up, we have study structure. And if the underlying part talks about the structure, how they did that study, then that it could be a study structure function type. It could also be clarification of a prior concept. It could clarify, and it could firstly tell that concept, a brand new concept, and then it could clarify it. It could explain it. It could also link concept. It could also show results. It could illustrate, or it could give examples. It could also summarize or conclude. Now let's move on to the question. So yep, let's read this passage. Architectural theorists have examined how postmodern architecture, and now the underlined part begins, a design movement that emerged as a reaction against the rigid simplicity of modernist architecture, emphasizing complexity, historical references, and playful ornamentation, challenges the dominant architectural trends of that century. Meanwhile, so that person has explored how architects blended modern ideals with regional influences to create diverse designs. However, so here we have a shift in the passage. The extent to which postmodern architecture opposed modernist versus adapted its principles remains debated, leading him to analyze both perspectives in his book. So the underlying portion here defines postmodern architecture, and it kind of describes its key characteristics. And the rest of the passage is like kind of it discusses how scholars studied those postmodern architecture, and it also has a shift here, and it says there is an ongoing debate about its relationship to modernism. So yeah, and we can now move on to answer choices. Choice A, it provides examples of how a movement was studied by scholars before that person's work. Well, the underlying portion doesn't even mention previous studies. So that's why we can eliminate choice A. Choice B, it gives a basic description of a movement that is central to the discussion that follows. Well, yeah, the underlying portion provides an overview of postmodern architecture, and that's the main topic of the passage, so I guess that's true. Let's keep B. To see, it clarifies a concept that the author implies was unclear in the studies mentioned in the text. Well, the passage doesn't say that postmodernism was unclear or misunderstood. It doesn't say that, so we can eliminate choice C. It introduces a method of architectural analysis that is discussed in greater detail later in the text. The underlying part defines a movement. It doesn't talk about a method, like nothing about the method here. That's why choice D is also wrong, and the best choice here is choice B. So yep. Always, before looking at the answer choices, you can ask yourself questions. What was that underlying portion was about? And it's gonna help you choose the answer. And the other thing that I see not many people think about is how does this underlying parts connect to the rest of the passage? Like connecting those dots is also something that is important. And in this case, it provides a background for the studies of scholars, right? Yep. Now let's move on to the next question type, which is quotation questions. Sometimes these questions are a little hard, and it's really important for us to practice on this question as well. So here's the question that I've created, and it asks for the claim which should illustrate the claim. Okay. So now let's read the short passage. The Diversity of Trees is a 2015 botanic study by Dr. Someone. In one section, that person discusses how certain tree species are more adaptable to climate change than others, emphasizing that some species thrive in various environmental conditions while others struggle. She writes, here we have a blank. So it says some tree species are adaptable to climate change than other tree species. So the correct answer choice should illustrate this idea, right? Meaning it should describe tree species that could thrive even though there are environmental challenges like climate, like environmental conditions. For example, it could be climate change as well. So now let's move on to choices. The towering of redwoods of California, once dominant, now facing growing threats from rising temperatures and prolonged droughts. This talks about trees struggling with climate change, but the claim isn't about species that adapt. But like what we want is the claim that should say species should adapt well to change. That is the claim that should be added. That's why choice A is wrong, because it doesn't include that part. It doesn't say there are some species that adapt well to change as well. So that's why A is wrong. Choice B, the resilient sycamore capable of withstanding both urban pollution and seasonal flooding continues to flourish in diverse landscapes. Yeah, this supports the idea that some tree species are more adaptable than others because it describes how this sycamores survive in those challenging conditions. That's why B is the correct answer choice. Choice C, the ancient Dinko, a relic from the time of the dinosaurs, stands as a testament to the endurance of certain tree species. Well, it talks about species surviving for a long time, but it doesn't directly discuss its adaptability. It doesn't say it adapts well or not. That's why C is right. Choice D. Beneath the shifting canopy, trees compete for sunlight, their branches stretching towards the sky in an endless struggle for survival. Well, this is a very general statement about tree growth and competition, and there's nothing about adaptation to climate change. That's why D is also wrong. So the best choice here is choice B because it mentions a tree that could withstand pollution and flooding, which shows adaptability to climate change. So that's the best choice here. Now let's move on to the next question type, which is support and weaken. So here we have a question. Which finding, if true, would most directly support the conclusion? Okay, so now let's read the text. So here we have something which is a widely cultivated species known for its sensitivity to climate temperature changes. As global temperatures rise, researchers are investigating how shifting climate patterns impact grape ripening and harvest timing. So they're researching how that climate change could affect two things. First one, grape ripening and harvest time, the second one. One hypothesis suggests that warmer autumn temperatures extend the growing season, potentially leading to higher sugar content in grapes and earlier harvest. To evaluate this claim, here we have viticulturists. They monitored vines across multiple vineyards for several years, concluding that here we have a conclusion. Grape vines benefit from extended warmth in the fall, resulting in earlier ripening. So the passage says that warmer autumn help those grape vines ripen earlier. So that's the main thing, right? Which results in earlier ripening. Now we can move on to answer choices. Choice A. Although grapevines in cooler regions also showed some increase in sugar content in years with warmer autumns, the increase was much greater in vineyards located in traditionally warm climates. Well, yeah, this seems correct because it says warmer autumns lead to more ripening and also shows sugar content, which affects ripening increases, especially in warm regions. So let's keep A for now. Choice B. Although significant year-to-year variations in temperature were recorded during the study, no noticeable trend in harvest timing was observed across the vineyards monitored. If no trend in harvest timing was observed, then it contradicts the conclusion of researchers. That's why B is wrong. Choice C. Although grapevines in warm temperatures ripen earlier on average, those grown in higher altitudes ripened later than those in lower altitude regions regardless of temperature patterns. Well, this choice introduces altitude as a factor which will affect. Well, there was nothing about altitude in the passage. That's why we can eliminate choice C as well. Choice Z, although grapevines in years with warmer autumns tended to produce more fruit overall, those years also had unusually cool springs, making it unclear whether autumn warmth alone was responsible for early ripening. This choice raises some doubts about whether Ottoman worms is the sole cause, and it's literally gonna weaken our conclusion. And we don't want that, right? That's why D is wrong. And the best choice here is choice A. And always look for an answer that literally tells you direct evidence of this trend, of this conclusion here. So yep, next up we have text completion question type. So here we have a question. You can pause the video right now and solve it on your own first. And so this question asks for completing the text. Let's read the text now. The eastern halberd is the largest species in North America and a key indicator of freshwater ecosystem health. Due to habitat destruction and water pollution, populations have declined significantly. So that's an important thing. Population have declined. Conservation biologists Dr. Rachel Simmons and her team tested whether a method called head starting, raising juveniles in captivity before releasing them into the wild, could improve survival rates. Working in two river systems, they released both juveniles and wild-born juveniles to compare survival rates. Simmons and her team found that head-started individuals showed a much higher survival rate than did wild-born juveniles, suggesting that, so the passage suggests that head starting increases survival rates. So that head starting is the method, as you saw in this text, and it just improves survival rate. And the correct answer to show that choice A. Providing young individuals with a controlled environment before releasing may allow them to develop stronger survival skills that help them persist in the wild. Yeah, it supports that idea, which is head starting improves survival and says stronger survival skills. Yep, so I guess we can keep choice A for now. Choice B, salamanders that grow in polluted environments are inherently less likely to survive to adulthood than those in pristine habitats. Well, this discusses pollution, but the experiment focuses on head starting, not environmental conditions here. That's why B is wrong. Choice C, head starting is more likely to improve survival rates for river-dwelling species than for land-dwelling species. Well, the passage never compares river-dwelling versus land-dwelling species. That's why choice C is also wrong. Choice D, some amphibians naturally experience high mortality rates in the wild regardless of conservation efforts. So what are they? So central idea is the main point or purpose of the passage or a paragraph, whereas details are specific information supporting or illustrating the central idea. So you may be thinking how to identify these questions. And there are 4 common phrases. What is the main purpose of the passage? What does the author mainly focus on, or what is the author's main idea? The passage suggests ... So mainly the 3 skills that you need to have in order to get questions right in this question type. So the first skill is summarizing the passage. So what you want to do is just skim the passage to understand its topic. So this is the first thing that you want to do when you read the passage. You want to identify the topic. What is the passage about? And then you want to identify the purpose if the question is asking, why is it actually written? You can also look for repetition of keywords or ideas. So repeated ideas are kind of main ideas. And the second skill that you need is spotting key sentences. So in some passages, you can find topic sentences of each paragraph. And I'm not saying that you can find the topic sentence of each paragraph all the time, but sometimes you might find it, and it's usually gonna be in the first or last sentences. And you can also identify shifts in tone or direction. So the words that you see a lot on the SAT that can shift the tone is however. And this is the most common one that I've seen in past exams in digital SAT. Thus is also, I've seen thus as well. So the third skill is using context clues for details. You also have to be able to find specific evidence in the passage to support the central idea. So that's also important. So now let's go through a step-by-step process. So the first step is reading the question. Determine if it's asking for a central idea, main point, or a detail. So that's the first thing that you want to do. You have to identify what is the question asking for. And then the second step is skimming the passage. And during this step, you have to note key phrases in the introduction and conclusion. Next up, you have to find the evidence. For questions that ask details, you have to locate the specific line or paragraph. So, yeah, you have to identify the specific line. And the next step is eliminating wrong answer choices. And you might have heard this so many times, but a lot of people don't actually teach you how to eliminate some choices. So usually wrong choices are the ones that are irrelevant or extreme answers. And you may be thinking, what do you mean by extreme answer choices? What I mean here is that there are some answer choices that include words like every time, always, or never. And those answer choices include those extreme phrases that are usually wrong. That I'm not saying 100% of the time, but they are usually wrong. Answers based on personal assumptions or unrelated details. So this is also kind of a type of wrong answer choices where they give some sort of assumptions that are not actually exist in the passage, or they may also include unrelated details. So the final step to answering the question right is verifying the answer. You have to match it with the passage's key ideas or specific evidence. So now I'm gonna tell you 3 common traps, and then we will solve questions related to them. So the first type is the ones that are too broad or too narrow. Central idea questions often trick students with overly general or overly specific answer choices. So you have to keep that in mind. So the second common trap that I see a lot of students make is misleading details. For detailed questions, irrelevant information can appear correct. For example, in the passage, the answer choice might be true, but is it actually relevant to the question they are asking? So you have to ask that question. And in the questions that you're going to solve, you will see those types of common traps as well. So the third type is assumptions. So you have to avoid answers that are not directly supported by the passage. So now here we'll be solving questions. And not to spoil the Blue Book practice tests, what I did was I excluded active questions. I excluded questions from full-length practice tests. And there is a feature like that in College Board question bank. So I excluded all these questions so that I will not be spoiling those practice tests. And we will be solving those things because I personally believe that College Board resources are the best ones to prepare. I've seen some third-party questions, and they're not as good as you may think. So now, without further ado, let's get into it. So here we have the first question. So go back, and the first step is reading the question. Now, let's read the question. Which choice best states the main idea? Let me change the color of the thing. The main idea of the text. So they're asking about the main idea. So this second step is scanning the passage. So let's read the passage. The following text is from, we don't care about people's names. From now, 5 children and it. 5 young siblings have just moved with their parents from London to a house in the countryside that they call the White House. It was not really a pretty house at all. It was quite ordinary, and mother thought it was rather inconvenient. Not pretty, ordinary and inconvenient, and was quite annoyed at there being no shelves to speak of and hardly a cupboard in the place. Father used to say the ironwork on the roof and coping was like the architect's nightmare. But, so here we have a word that is changing the tone of the passage, or let's say paragraph. So you always have to keep those types of phrases in your mind, and they change a lot of things. But the house was deep in the countryside with no other house in sight, and the children had been in London for 2 years without so much as once going to the seaside even for a day by an excursion train. And so the White House seemed to them a sort of fairy palace set down in an earthly paradise. So now let's think about, let's kind of predict or think about what the main idea could be. So in the first part, they are talking about the house being inconvenient, not pretty, and like they're telling it was a nightmare. So it's more of a bad thing. And then the passage is shifting the tone and is talking about children loving the place. So the main idea, I believe, should be kind of related to this. So now let's have a look at answer choices. Choice A, although their parents believe the house has several drawbacks, the children are enchanted by it. So I believe that this answer might be true because as you can see in the first part, we talked about parents believing that there are some several drawbacks. And in the second part, we're talking about children being happy. So I believe A could be correct, but still, we will read the other answer choices. The children don't like the house nearly as much as their parents do. So it's kind of shifting the focus. And B is actually the opposite of what the passage told. So choice C, each member of the family admires a different characteristic of the house. I mean, I don't think that each member of the family kind of likes one characteristic because, for example, in the passage, there was nothing about what parents like it about the house. So that's why C is also wrong. Choice D, the house is beautiful and well built, but the children miss their old home in London. No, children did not actually miss. It was like a fairy palace for them. Children really like that place, so D is also wrong. So the best choice here is A. So now let's move on to the next question. So now we will read the question. According to the text, what is significant about Kotlet's use of Linacut printing? So what is significant? So here we have, they're asking for kind of a specific detail, I believe. Yeah. So let's read the passage. To make her art more widely available, graphic artists turn it to linocuts. In linocuts, printing, an artist carves an image into a sheet of linoleum to create a stamp that is used to mass produce prints. In those series, she or he depicts the everyday experiences of Black women alongside the achievements of well-known Black women. This pairing invites the viewer to draw connections among the women. The Likanat process enables her work to reach a wide audience and supported her aim to unite Black women through her arts. So the passage is talking about that type of printing, and it's telling that this is used for connecting, for drawing connections among the women and uniting those Black women. So as you can see, it's more about drawing connection and uniting. So now let's have a look at the answer choices. Choice A, it involved using materials that were readily available. I mean, there was nothing about those materials, so A is wrong because it's irrelevant. Choice B, it helped her use art to connect people, especially Black women. Yes. So as you can see, draw connections means connecting people, and it helped her use that art to connect Black women. So yes, B is kind of correct, but still, let's have a look at other answer choices. She became commercially successful once she started using it. I don't think it's that important and it's that relevant, so she's wrong. Choice D, she was one of the first Black artists to use. I mean, the passage wasn't really about her being the first Black artist, so D is wrong, so B is the correct answer. Now let's have a look at the next question. So the question is asking about the main idea of the text. Now let's read the text. Scrapbooks of saved fabric pieces were commonly kept by women in the 19th century United States, but few are as meticulously detailed as someone's work. Alongside each piece of fabric, that person recorded intimate memories such as dressmaking with her sister. Additionally, she listed the prices and how she used the fabric. Historians note that by representing 50 years of changing textures and patterns and dress styles, the scrapbook is a record of 19th century textiles and dressmaking as well as that person's life. So as you can see, the passage was about scrapbooks of fabric pieces, and they're telling you that it contained almost everything, almost 50 years of different textures, patterns, and dress styles. So now let's have a look at the answer choices. That person inspired other women to save pieces of fabric in scrapbooks and provide historical records of 19th century fashions in the United States. So there was nothing about inspiration, her being inspiration to other women. So A is wrong. Choice B. Historians rely on fabric scrapbooks to understand how fashions changed throughout the 19th century United States. Yes, we know how fashion changed throughout that century, but do we know that historians relied on those scrapbooks? No, and it's also not the main idea. You have to find the main idea, which has to be talked about throughout the passage. Fabric scrapbooks were a popular hobby for many women in the 19th century. We don't really know whether it was popular hobby or not, so C is wrong. Choice D. That person's scrapbook provides a detailed account of her life. Yes, that's true. And historical record of fashion trends. Yes, exactly. In the 19th century United States. So choice D is 100% correct because it's talking about the main idea of the passage. It was in the passage they told about intimate memories. That means about her life. For example, her life including dressmaking with her sister. Also, it included the change of different textures, patterns, dress styles, and everything. So D is correct. Now let's move on to the next question. The main idea of the text. Let's read the passage. Psychologists wanted to test how young children think about rewards and fairness. So the two things that they wanted to test, rewards and fairness. In an experiment, two teachers handed out rewards while children aged 4 to 6 watched it. The teachers gave out the same number of rewards, but one of them counted the rewards out loud. So in this experiment, there were two teachers, and they gave rewards, and they gave the same number of words, but one of those was counted aloud. The children were then asked who was fairer. 93% chose the teacher who counted. The psychologists think that counting showed that children that the teacher wanted to be fair. The children may have believed that teacher who did not count did not care about fairness. So that's kind of the main idea, I believe. So the thing is that in that experiment, counted was something that showed that the teacher wanted to be fair. But if there is no counting, it kind of means that the teacher did not care about fairness. So choice A, psychologists think children cannot understand the concept of fairness until they are 6 years old. No, there's nothing about the age of them. For example, there's no limitation of age in the passage, so A is wrong. An experiment found that counting out loud is the best way to teach mathematical concepts to children. This is an example of the choice that includes extreme phrases, the best, as you can see in this case. Let's see whether the passage supports this. No, the passage doesn't actually tells that. So B is wrong. Choice C, psychologists think young children expect to be rewarded when the children show that they care about fairness. It's kind of irrelevant and is not supported by the passage. So C is wrong. Choice D, an experiment showed that the way rewards are given out may affect whether young children think the situation is fair. Yes. Why? Because this answer choice is talking about whether the situation is fair, whether it affects or not. The way those rewards are given. If it's like given out loud, that will definitely affect what children think whether the situation is fair or unfair. So D is 100% correct. So now let's move on to the next question. So you can also pause the video from now on and solve it yourself first and then play the video and watch the explanation. So the question is asking about the main idea of the text. Now let's read the text. Microplastics are pieces of plastic that are smaller than a grain of rice. These small plastics can be found in large quantities in ocean waters. Ecologists and her team are studying the role reef building corals have in capturing microplastics from ocean waters. Through research, her team has found that these corals may be storing up to 20 million kilograms of microplastics each year in their skeletons and tissues. So they're asking about the main idea. So the passage first started off talking about microplastics being small, but they told that they are found in large quantities in ocean waters. And they're telling that corals have a great effect on it. So those corals are actually storing that many microplastics, large quantities of microplastics, like 20 million. And even here at the beginning, they're talking about them being in large quantities. So as you can see, you're seeing a lot of repeated ideas. And in this case, that repeated idea is them microplastics being in large quantities in corals. So that's our prediction, I believe. Now let's read the choices. Choice A. Ecologists are interested in learning more about how certain corals build large reefs. I mean, this is not the main idea, and we don't really know whether ecologists are interested about how those corals build large reefs. We don't care about how. So A is wrong. Choice E. Questions remain around the impact certain corals have on ocean ecosystems. There was nothing about questions remaining and them being not confident, so B is wrong. So now let's have a look at choice C. Microplastics are small pieces of plastics. Microplastics are small pieces of plastic that can be found in ocean waters. So this choice is talking about them being small, and this is actually not the main idea. It's just a detail that is talked about in the first sentence, and that's it. But what we want is the main idea. So choice D, ecologists predict that corals store large amounts of microplastics from ocean waters, and this is 100% right. As you can see, throughout the passage, we have a lot of details about them being in large quantities and corals storing them. So now let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own. So let's read the question first. What is one advantage of attacking glass bead to particles when using optical tweezers? Okay, a lot of things that I'm not really understanding, but still that's okay, because we only need to understand what advantage means here, I believe. So what is one advantage? We have to find that advantage, and that's it. So you know what we're looking for. Now let's go to the passage. So they are specialized tools. I'm kind of getting what that means. Particularly useful in biology and medicine that use high-powered beams of light to trap and manipulate particles for study. Use of the tool has led to several scientific and medical breakthroughs over the last few decades. Until now, we didn't have anything about that advantage, but the particles are often under prolonged exposure to the intense heat of the light's beams. Okay. To overcome the risk of overheating and thereby damage, researchers sometimes attack nano-sized glass beads to particles, allowing the light to focus on the bead instead of the particles. Okay, so researchers attack. So here we have attacking nano-sized glass beads. So here we have glass beads, two particles. Here we have two particles. When using optical tweezers. I mean, they already talk about it here. So we have to find one advantage. So that advantage is talked about here to overcome the risk of overheating and therefore damage. So I'm predicting that the correct answer choice should talk about uh, solving the problem of overheating, avoiding overheating maybe. Yeah, I guess avoiding overheating is kind of my prediction. Now let's read the answer choices. It decreases the time it takes for the optical tweezers to locate and capture the particles. We don't care about the time. And this is also a common trap on the SAT, which is talking about time to confuse some students. So A is wrong. Choice B, it facilitates the handling of particles without directly heating the particles themselves. So yeah, I believe this might be true. Yeah, because they're talking about heating, so that they avoid heating without directly heating the particles themselves. So it might be right. Yeah. Still, let's have a look at the answer choices. It allows researchers to use weaker light beams to manipulate particles. No, we don't have anything but light, so C is wrong. Choice D, it adds a material to which particles can transfer any heat absorbed from the optical tweezer's light beam. No, there's nothing about adding a material, so D is wrong. So the correct answer is B. Now, let's have a look at the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own. To protect themselves when being attacked, hagfish, jawless marine animals that resemble eels will release large quantities of slimy threads. Okay, because these threads are unusually strong and elastic, scientists and her colleagues have been trying to recreate them in a lab as an eco-friendly alternative to petroleum-based fibers that are often used in fabrics. The researchers want to reproduce the threads in the lab because farming hagfish for this slime would be expensive and potentially harmful to the hagfish. So, and they're asking about the main idea. So let's talk about what the passage actually is talking about. So they're telling that animals producing so many those threads, and because they're strong and elastic, they're kind of have been trying to recreate them in a lab and making them more eco-friendly compared to petroleum-based fibers. And they're telling that yeah, they want to reproduce it because farming hagfish is expensive and harmful. So the kind of thing in this passage is those mucus-like threads might kind of scientists can use those mucus-like threads to generate or recreate a new kind of fabric that can be alternative to those fibers. So I guess that could be kind of my prediction. So now let's read the answer choices. The slimy threads that hagfish release might help researchers create a new kind of fabric. Exactly. So A is correct. Choice B. Hagfish have inspired researchers to develop a new petroleum-based fabric. No, this is wrong. So B is wrong. Hagfish are not well suited to being raised in captivity. Nothing about them being suited or not in captivity. So C is wrong. The ability of hagfish to slime their attackers compensates for their jawless. Nothing about that in the passage. So C is wrong. Now let's move on to the next question. the main idea of the text. In the study of new technology adoption, researchers and others examined negative disconfirmation, which occurs when experiences fall short of one's expectations, to determine whether it could lead to positive outcomes for users. So the team focused on established users of smart home technology, which presents inherent utilization challenges but tends to attract users with high expectation, often leading to feelings of dissonance. So the researchers found that many users employed cognitive mechanisms to solve or mitigate those feelings, ultimately reversing the initial sense of disappointment. They're kind of examines one idea, which is negative disconfirmation, and they tested it through smart home technology users. So they kind of attracted the people who have high expectations, and it led to feelings of dissonance. So the researchers showed that many users employed those to solve those problems. So now let's have a look at answer choices. Research suggests that most users of smart home technology will not achieve a feeling of satisfaction given the utilization challenges of such technology. Now, when using this term, which is negative disconfirmation, they will actually feel satisfied. So this is wrong. Choice A is wrong. Choice B. Although most smart home technology is aimed at meeting or exceeding users' high expectations, those expectations in general remain poorly understood. There's nothing about those expectations being poorly understood in the passage, so B is wrong. And you don't want answer choices that kind of tell new ideas that haven't been talked about in the passage. Choice C. Research suggests that users with high expectations for a new technology can feel content with that technology even after experiencing negative disconfirmation. Exactly. Choice C is 100% right, because as we told about it, first they had high expectations, and that led to feelings of dissonance. But then when they solved those issues and made it so good, they felt so they reversed the initial sense of disappointment and they were happy. So C is 100% right. Choice D. Although negative disconfirmation has often been studied, little is known about the cognitive mechanisms shape each user's reactions to it in the context of new technology adoption. Nothing about that in the passage. It's 100% irrelevant. So now let's move on to the next question. So you can pause the video now and solve it on your own, then you can play the video. So the question is asking about the discovery of the sandal. Interesting. Let's read the text. The ice melted on a Norwegian mountain during a particularly warm summer in 2019, revealing a 1700-year-old sandal to a mountaineer looking for artifacts. The sandal would normally have degraded quickly, but it was instead well preserved for centuries by the surrounding ice. According to archaeologists and his team, the sandal like those worn by Romans would have offered any protection from the cold in the mountains. So, some kind of insulation like fabric or animal skin would have needed to be worn on the feet with the sandal. So, what are they talking about? The discovery of the sandal? They are telling that that sort of sandal would typically have degraded quickly, but this one was well preserved. Why? Because of the surrounding ice, and They're talking about if that was like sandal worn by imperial romance, it wouldn't have offered any protection from the cold in the mountains. So they're telling that it wasn't also because of the animal skin. So it was because of the surrounding ice. So now let's have a look at the answer choices. Choice A. Temperatures contributed to both protecting and revealing the sandal. So temperatures could be kind of ice, I believe. Being cold and like, yeah, I guess A might be true, but still, let's have a look at other answer choices. The discovery really revealed that Roman Empire had more influence on Norway than archaeologists previously assumed. No, there's nothing about that in the passage. Like having more influence on Norway is like not mentioned. Archaeologists would have found that the sandal eventually without help from the general public. I mean, nothing about whether help matters from the general public or not in the past. So it's wrong. So see, the sandal would have degraded if it hadn't been removed from the ice. Nothing about that as well. So A is the correct answer choice. Now let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now. So, according to the text, what is one reason they founded You Recycle Initiative Africa? So you want the why behind them founding it. So they, no, he or she, that person, co-founded it when she was only a teenager. They founded the organization to teach young people how their actions affect the environment and why recycling is important. So the reason why it was founded was because to teach those young people how it affects the environment and why recycling is important. So now let's look at the answer choices. So bring attention to overlooked African artists. Nothing about African artists, so A is wrong. Choice B, to teach young people why recycling is important. So this might be true. Yeah, I guess it is true, maybe. Yeah, well, still, let's have a look at other answer choices. So help adults gain important outdoor skill. Nothing about outdoor skills, so C is wrong. Choice D, to give teenagers advice about starting business. Nothing about business, about starting business. So D is wrong. So clearly choice B is 100% right. So now let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own. So they're asking about the main idea of the text. Let's read the text. So shimmering is a collective defense behavior that researchers have observed in giant honeybee colonies. Okay? When shimmering, different groups of bees flip their eyes up and down in what looks like waves. This defense is initiated when hornets hover near a colony, serving to deter the hornets from approaching the bees. Researchers hypothesize this behavior is a specialized defense response to hornets, as it is not observed when other larger predators approach the colony. So the passage is about shimmering, and they're telling that shimmery is kind of defense against hornets, as you can see, hornets here. And they're telling that it is not observed when other larger predators approach them. So I guess it's kind of more defense for hornets. So choice A, researchers are unsure how giant honeybees defend against predators larger than hornets. I mean, then it's not the main idea. They might be unsure about them, but they want repeated ideas, so A is wrong. Choice B, researchers think that shimmering in giant honeybees is a specific defense against hornets. Yes, 100%. And our prediction was kind of right. So B is Correct? Choice Z. Hornets are known to be the main predator of giant honeybees. This could be the assumption, but this is not actually mentioned in the text, so C is wrong. Choice D. Several different species of insects use shimmering to defend against hornets. We don't really know about other species of insects, and it's not talked about it in the past, so it is also wrong. Now let's move on to the next question. So you can pause the video now and solve it on your own. So they're asking about the main idea. Let's read the text. So NASA's Cassini probe has detected an unusual wobble in the rotation of Mimas. Okay, there was an unusual wobble in the rotation of Saturn's smallest moon. So Mimas is Saturn's smallest moon. Using a computer model to study its gravitational interactions with Saturn and tidal forces, geophysicists and colleagues have proposed that this wobble could be due to liquid ocean moving beneath the moon's ice surface. So they also found the reason why. Researchers believe other moons should be examined to see if they too might have oceans hidden beneath their surfaces. So this passage is about that unusual wobble, and they are telling that they study its gravitational interactions, and they're telling the reason why that wobble exists. Yeah, and they're telling that the researchers believe that other moons should also be tested. Now let's read the answer choices. Roden and colleagues were the first people to confirm that several of those contain hidden oceans. Is that the main idea? Or do we actually know that they were the first? So no, so A is wrong. Researcher has failed to identify signals that there is an ocean hidden beneath the surface of Mimas. No, they didn't fail, I believe. So B is wrong. Roden and colleagues created a new computer model that identifies moons with hidden oceans without needing to analyze the moon's rotation. Is it a main idea? We can't say that because it's not the main idea. Research has revealed that an oddity in the rotation of Mimas could be explained by an ocean hidden beneath its surface. So I think it's right because unusual means oddity or being odd in the rotation of Mimas. So it was talked about here as well in the rotation of those Mimas, and they also told the reason why due to liquid ocean moving beneath its ice surface. Yes, it is explained by an ocean hidden beneath its surface. Yes, 100% right. And it could be the main idea. So it is 100% right, correct. So now let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own, and then watch the explanation. So the question is asking about the main idea of the text. So this text is from someone's poem. Okay. I wish I could remember that first day, first hour, first moment of your meeting me. If bright or dim the season, it might be summer or winter for all I can say. So unrecorded did it slip away. So blind was I to see and foresee. So dull to mark the budding of my tree that would not blossom yet for many a May. So the poem was about the speaker kind of regretting that he or she was so blind and like it was so unrecorded and so dull to mark that event. And kind of the speaker is regretting um how to know whether how she met like all those things. And like, yeah, so I think mm, it's about regretting. Yeah. So now let's read the choices. The speaker celebrates how the passage of time has strengthened a relationship that once seemed unimportant. Mm, is there something about strengthening a relationship? And are they celebrating? Is the speaker celebrating how the passage of time? I'm not sure. It's kind of, it could be right, but I don't know. Like, it has some elements that kind of make me not choose this answer choice. Let's look at other choices. Because the speaker did not anticipate how important a relationship would become, she cannot recall how the relationship began, which she regrets. Yes, she regrets, and she didn't anticipate how important it was. Yes, because on that first date, uh, the speaker is saying, I wish I could remember that. So I guess B is way better than A. So I guess the reason to eliminate A because there's no celebration about how the passage of time has strengthened. So B is way better than A. Still, let's have a look at other answer choices. As the anniversary of the beginning of an important relationship approaches, the speaker feels conflicted about how best to commemorate it. No, there is nothing about the speaker feeling conflicted about it, since he's wrong. Choice D, after years of neglecting means ignoring a once valuable relationship, the speaker worries it may be too late for her to salvage the relationship. Nothing about being too late and those things, so D is wrong. So the best choice here is B. Let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own. So let's read the question. According to the text, why does the narrator consult some family photographs? Why? So that's important. Let's read the passage. So it's from a novel, Funny Boy. Sometimes reading the name of a novel is also kind of helps you to understand that piece. The 7-year-old narrator lives with his family in Sri Lanka. So this person is the narrator's aunt. Okay, this person, who was the youngest in my father's family, had left for America 4 years ago when I was 3, and I could not remember what she looked like. I went into the corridor to look at the family photographs that were hung there, but all the pictures were old ones, taken when Vadia auntie was a baby or young girl. Try as I might, I couldn't get an idea of what she looked like now. My imagination, however, was quick to fill in this void. This kind of piece of a novel is about the narrator kind of searching for the image and trying to get an idea of what she looked like, what her aunt looks like now. So now you have to answer the question, why does the narrator consult some family photographs? I believe it is because to know how to know the appearance of his aunts, I believe. So that's kind of my prediction. Now let's read the choice. He wants to use the photographs as an inspiration for a story he's writing. Nothing about the story he's writing, so it's wrong. Just B, he's curious about how his father dressed a long time ago. Nothing about how his father dressed. So B is wrong. He hopes the photographs will help him recall what his aunt looked like. Exactly, I believe this is the right answer choice. Choice D, he wants to remind his aunt of an event that is shown in an old photograph. No, there's nothing about an event. So D is wrong. Choice C is 100% right. Now let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own. So, the question is asking about why Bill regularly asks about seafaring men. So you have to define the reason why he asks about seafaring men. So the following text is adapted from Someone's Now Treasure Island. So he's a sailor staying at that place, and in run by the narrator's parents. Every day when Bill came back from his trawl, he would ask if any seafaring man had gone by along the road. At first we thought it was the want of company of his own kind that made him ask this question. So they're talking about what they first thought was, but it wasn't like that. At last, he began to see he was desirous to avoid them. So he wanted to avoid them. That's why he asked. So we don't even need to read the rest of the paragraph. So we can look at the answer choices. He's hoping to find an old friend and fellow sailor. No, nothing but that. She just wants to avoid them. That's it. He's trying to secure a job as part of the crew on a new ship. No, nothing about a job. B is wrong. Just see, he isn't sure that other guests at the inn will be welcoming sailors. No, nothing about other guests and nothing about welcoming them. Choice D, he doesn't want to encounter any other sailor unexpectedly. Yes, she wants to avoid any other sailor unexpectedly. So this the correct answer choice. See you in day 2 where I will give more explanations. So let's read the question. What challenge did the researchers have to overcome to examine the glyphs? So you need to find the specific detail which is a challenge that researchers had to solve to examine the glyphs. Let's read the text. In 2022, researchers discovered ancient indigenous glyphs or drawings on the walls of a cave in Alabama. The cave's ceiling was only a few feet high, affording no position from which the glyphs, being as wide as 10 feet, could be viewed or photographed in their entirety. However, so here we have a phrase which can change a lot of things on the SAT. However, the researchers used a technique called photogrammetry to assemble numerous photos of the walls into a 3D model. Then they worked with these things to understand the significance. Okay. So, because the ceiling was only a few feet high, there was no position, and it could not be viewed or photographed in the entirety. So that's a problem, and that's a challenge. And in order to solve or overcome that challenge, they used this technique, so that they could view it as a 3D model. So the problem is not being able to view or photograph it in the entirety. So we can't really view it in the entirety. Because A, the cave was so remote that the researchers could not use easily reach it? No, there was nothing about being so far away. So it is wrong. Choice B. Some of the glyphs were so faint they couldn't be photographed. Nothing about those glyphs being faint. So B is wrong. Choice C. Researchers were unable to create a 3D model of the cave. I mean, that's not a problem. It's kind of the opposite of a solution. I think maybe let's look at choice D. The cave's dimensions prevented the researchers from fully viewing the glyphs. This is 100% right. Why? Because the problem, as I told, was viewing it in their entirety. In their entirety is fully viewing it. So choice D is 100% right. We'll move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So the question is asking about the main idea about hunts. So in many of his sculptures, artists uses broad forms rather than extreme accuracy. Broad forms rather than extreme accuracy to hint at specific people or ideas. In his first major work, Hunt constructed the mythical character, a weaver who was changed into a spider, by welding bits of steel together into something that, although vaguely human, is strange and machine-like. And his large bronze sculpture commemorates activists and journalists using mainly flowing curved pieces of metal that creates stylized flame. So the main idea here is that he usually creates those or kind of shows those sculptures in a way that is strange, machine-like. Yeah, kind of those broad forms rather than realistic ones. Yeah. So I think the main idea, like my prediction is that the correct answer should look something like he usually creates those sculptures that are kind of machine-like or strange, maybe. Yeah. So let's look at instances. He often depicts the subjects of his sculptures using an unrealistic style. So this might be true. Yeah, this could be even the main idea. But still, you're gonna look at other answer choices. He uses different kinds of materials depending on what kind of sculpture he plans to create. Now, nothing about different kind of materials, choosing which material to use. So B is wrong. He tends to base his art on important historical figures rather than on fictional characters. No, it's not the main idea. He has altered his approach to sculpture over time, and his works have become increasingly abstract. So it's not the main idea of the text, so A is the correct answer choice. So you have to find the main idea of the text. If you want, you can pause the video and solve it on your own first. So let's read the text. Many intellectual histories of the Black Power movement of those centuries rely heavily on essays and other explicitly ideological works as primary sources. Interesting. A tendency that can overrepresent the perspectives of a small number of thinkers, most of whom were male. Historian has shown expanding the area of primary sources to encompass more types of print material, including political cartoons, advertisements, and artwork, leads to a much better understanding of the movement and the crucial diverse roles the Black woman played in shaping it. So the main idea here is that their primary source is only essays and some ideological works, and they kind of are ideas of a small number of thinkers, and most of them are male. And instead, They're kind of suggesting that they should use more resources as their primary source. For example, they also should use political cartoons, advertisements, and artwork so that they can better understand the movement in the diverse roles there. So now let's look at answer choices. Farmers' methods and research have enriched the historical understanding of the Black Power movements. And Black women's contributions to it. Farmers' method. Maybe. Let's keep this choice. Before farmers' research, historians had largely ignored the intellectual dimensions. Nothing about intellectual dimensions of the movement, so this wrong. Other historians of the Black Power movement have criticized his use of unconventional. We can't say they're unconventional, I believe, and it's not the main idea, so he's wrong. The figures in the Black Power movement, whom historians tend to cite, would have agreed with Farman's conclusions about women's role in the movement. There's nothing about that. It's like completely new idea, I believe. So A is the best choice here, and it represents the main idea because in the text we have something about the historical understanding of the movements and their contribution. So let's move on. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So let's read the question. What does the text most strongly suggest about the disco genre? Let's read the text. Disco remains one of the most ridiculous popular music genres of the late 20th century. But, so here we have a phrase that changes the tone or, let's say, the attitude of the passage. But as scholars have argued, the genre is far less superficial than many people believe. So, although people believe that it is like the most ridiculous popular music genre, it's actually not that popular. Although people believe like that. Taking the case of disco icon, so here we have disco icon. She may have been associated with popular songs about love and heartbreak, subjects hardly unique to disco, by the way, but like many Black women singers before her, much of her music reflects concerns about community and identity. These concerns are present in many of the genre's least greatest songs, and they generally don't require much digging to reveal. So the passage is talking about disco genre being kind of, people believe that it's so popular, but it's actually not. So yes, this is my prediction. Let's look up answer choices. It has been unjustly ignored by most scholars despite the importance of the themes addressed by many of its genre songs. Maybe that is the importance of themes addressed by the genre songs relevant? I'm not really sure, but still let's keep it. It evolved over time from a superficial genre focus on romance to a genre focus on more serious concerns. No, there is nothing serious concerns like that shift, so B is wrong. It has been unfairly dismissed for the inclusion of subject matter that is also found in other musical genres. Yes, 100% right. It gave rise to a Black woman's musical tradition that has endured even though the genre itself faded in the late 20th century. I mean, the passage isn't actually talking about that. It's not the main focus. So the correct answer is C. Now let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So let's read the question. What does the text most strongly suggest about conventional ETL fabrication? Okay, let's read the text. In a paper about spin planar perovskite solar cells, one of several architectures designed to collect and store solar power, they describe a method for fabricating the cell's electronic transport layer, which is ETL, using a spray coating. Conventional ETL fabrication. Now we have something about conventional ETL fabrication is accomplished using a solution of nanoparticles. The process can result in a loss up to 80% of the solution, increasing the cost of fabricating at scale, an issue that may be obviated by spray coating fabrication, which the research described as highly reproducible, concise, and practical. So conventional ETA fabrication is accomplished using a solution of nanoparticles, and it is so like it cost is so high, and it's almost impossible to make it scalable because of the cost. And that problem is solved by spray coating fabrication. And spray coating fabrication is highly reproducible, concise, and practical. So now let's look at other answer choices. It is less suitable for manufacturing large volumes of planar PNP perovskite solar cells than an alternative fabrication method maybe. Yes, 100% right. Why? Because it's talking about it increasing the cost of manufacturing if it's done at scale. So if they produce large volumes, then the cost is going to be so high, and that's why it's less suitable. So A is correct, I believe. Still, let's have a look at other answer choices. It is more expensive than manufacturing at scale than other processes for fabricating ETLs used in other but it's kind of missing the parts about an alternative fabrication method, and it's also talking about other those architectures now in the same architecture. So it is wrong. It typically entails a greater loss of nanoparticle solution than do other established approaches. I mean, the main problem is not loss of nanoparticle solution. It's the kind of not being suitable because of the cost. So C is wrong. It is somewhat imprecise and therefore limits the effectiveness. No, it's wrong. So let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So let's read the question. According to the text, which piece of fabulous arts was on display in that place museum in 2017? So which piece of her art? So we have to find specific detail here. So we're gonna skim the passage quickly. Importance. Create. So Favela created an impressive life-size pinata-like sculpture of the car, which was displayed at that museum in Los Angeles in 2017. So she like sculpture, like pinata-like sculpture of this car was displayed. So you want the answer choice that tells them. Choice A, a painting? No, it's not a painting. It's a sculpture of a low-ride car. Yes. Choice B is correct. Not a painting it's not a sculpture of Jesse Valadius. So let's move on to the next one. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So they're asking about the main idea of the text. Bicycles were first mass-produced in the late 19th century throughout Europe and North America, allowing individuals remarkable freedom to travel longer distances quickly and comfortably. This freedom, coupled with the affordability of the vehicle, made the bicycle immensely popular. Individuals were able to live further from their workplaces, easily visit neighboring towns, and participate in new leisure and sport activities. Bicycling quickly became a popular social endeavor, with enthusiasts forming local cycling clubs to enjoy these new forms of activities with others. So, my prediction is bicycles were useful because of freedom, being able to travel longer distances, for new leisure and sport activities, for social endeavor, and all those things can be uh, generalized into facilities. No, facilities is kind of like opportunities would be a great word, I believe. Yeah, bicycles were useful for opportunities. So let's look at answer choices. Because A, the widespread adoption of the bicycle in the late 19th century provided new opportunities to the people. Yes, 100% right. It's exactly kind of my prediction. The affordability of the bicycle in the late 19th century made it the preferred way to travel. It's not the main idea. It is true, but it's not the main idea. It's just one detail in the passage. The popularity of the bicycle in the late 19th century gave rise to the first cycling clubs. It's not the main idea, it's just a small detail. The mass production of the bicycle in the late 19th century made it safer for people to use. No, it's not the main idea. Let's move on to the next one. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So they're asking about the main idea of the text. Let's read the text. To dye wool, weaver uses plants and vegetables from Arizona where she lives. For example, she achieved the deep reds and browns featured in her rug by using Arizona dog roots, grinding them before mixing the powder with water to create a dye bath. To intensify the appearance of certain colors, Taylor also sometimes mixes in clay obtained from nearby soil. So what is kind of the repeated idea here? Let me guess. So they're telling to dye wool. They are using plants and vegetables from Arizona, and that's the place where she lives. She also uses Arizona dog roots. So we have like Arizona a lot here, right? Arizona, it's the place where she lives. And she's also talking about nearby soil. That's interesting. So I guess the repeated idea here is using those resources near to her. Yeah. So that's my prediction. Let's go to the answer choices. Reds and browns are not commonly featured in most. This is not an idea. Taylor draws on local resources in the approach she uses to dye wool. Yes, exactly. That's 100% right, and that could be the main idea of the text. Taylor finds it difficult to locate. No, like nothing about being difficult to locate it, and it's not the main idea. In the path of 4 seasons is why the acclaimed for its many colored and innovative weaving techniques. It's not the main idea. Let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve on your own first. So, having written the impassionate call to arms letter to the Spanish Americans in 1791, intellectual is often considered a forerunner for the independence of movements in Latin America. But that person's role in history would have remained insignificant were it not for revolutionary who was handed the unpublished letter after his death. Miranda not only helped circulate the letter, but his edits and footnotes to the text position as a central figure in text creation. So, uh, so there was a person whose name was Viscado, and that person would not be that popular if Miranda did not help it circulate the letter after his death, and like she even edited and did some footnotes. So Miranda's help was useful for Viscada. I guess that's my prediction. Miranda's help was useful for Viscada. So choice A. The original authorship of Letter to the Spanish Americans is disputed by contemporary historians. I mean, nothing about being disputed about who wrote it. So that's the main idea of the text. Choice B. The majority of the most eloquently stated arguments in Letter to the Spanish Americans were written by Miranda. Is it saying that the majority of those arguments were written by him? We don't even know it, so B is wrong. Miranda played a crucial role in influencing the content and distribution of, yes, 100% right. So my prediction was Miranda helped. And it's not 100% like that, but still, it really helped me to find the correct answer. Letter to the Spanish Americans persuaded many people in Latin America to pursue national independence. Nothing about persuading people. So these also are wrong. Now let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video now and solve it on your own first. So what did the text mostly suggest about corals that produce bright colors? So that's a specific question, right? Because it's asking me about corals that produce bright colors. Now let's go to the passage and read it. Algae living within the tissues of corals play a crucial role in keeping corals. In the marine ecosystem, they're part of. Some species appear brown color when healthy due to algae tissue. In the event of environmental stressor, the algae can die or be expelled, causing the corals to appear white. To recover the algae, the bleached corals that begin to produce bright colors, which block intense sunlight, encouraging the light-sensitive algae to recognize the corals. So, the passage is telling that if it's healthy, then it's gonna be brown. If there was environmental stressor, it's gonna be white. And to recover from that environmental stressor, from that problem, they produce bright colors. Those corals produce bright colors, and those bright colors block intense sunlight, and they're used to recover from environmental stress. So that's my prediction. Now let's go to the answer choices. Choice A: these corals have likely been subjected to stressful environmental conditions. Yeah, I believe this is right because, but still, I guess it's 100% right. But still, I'm gonna explain why others are wrong. These corals are likely more vulnerable to exposure from intense sunlight than white corals are. There is no comparison of being vulnerable to intense sunlight than white corals are. Yes, we know that they are vulnerable to exposure from intense sunlight, but we don't want to compare. Uh, there's nothing about the comparison. So that's also a type of a trick answer that most incorrect answer choices are. They kind of include comparisons. This fact might be true, but there is no comparison in the passage. These corals have likely recovered from environmental events without the assistance of algae colonies. We don't really know that, so C is wrong. These corals are more likely to survive without algae colonies than brown corals are. No, there's nothing about that. So let's move on to the next question. So you can pause the video now and you can solve it on your own first. So this is asking about the main idea of the text. The centuries, the widespread acknowledgement in the involvement of cerebellum, a dense brain structure in vertebrates in coordinating motor control in humans, has hindered recognition of other possible functions of the structure. Neuroscience research from the last 2 decades suggests this, because until now they talked about what happened for centuries, but now they're talking about what research suggests now. So research now suggests that cerebellum regulates emotion and social behavior. In recent research by those people has identified a pathway connecting it to a sense of motivation and reward processing known as VTA. So the main idea here, I believe, is that that sort of cerebellum for centuries was kind of considered to control those motor functioning stuff, because as you can see, in coordinating motor control in humans, so for centuries they believed it was for those motor control. But now they suggest that they also have some additional or other regulations, regulations, for example, emotion, social behavior, motivation, and reward processing, and it is known as VTA. So yes, the correct answer should kind of talk about both what happened for centuries, what they thought, and now what they think. So let's look at answer choices. The recent verification of a pathway between VTA and cerebellum confirms the cerebellum's long suspected role in motor coordination. Nothing but they confirm the long suspected role, so A is wrong. Choice D. Recent advances in the field of neuroscience have challenged widely accepted claims about the function of a pathway connecting. So if you want the main idea, yes, it might be true. We can kind of infer, but there's nothing about that in the passage. And yeah, it's not a repeated idea, so it is wrong. The cerebellum has primarily been thought to regulate motor functioning. Yes. So it was thought for centuries that it regulates motor function. Correct. But in recent years, now, researchers have been uncovering additional functions. Yes, additional functions are emotion, motivation, and all that stuff that the passage talked about. So C is the correct answer choice. Choice D, technological limitation have historically hindered the study of. Do we have anything about technological limitation in the passage? No, we don't have anything about those limitations related to technology, so these are not.